This is the sixth and final video in a series on how to centralize your IT ticketing experience through AtBot. By incorporating out-of-the-box flow connectors with super smart services that AtBot offers, you can come close to automating all of your Tier 1 IT support processes right through AtBot, all with pretty simple AtBot skills. In the last video, we went over how to create a troubleshooting skill where AtBot responds to a user who needs to connect to a network printer. In this version, we're making the skill smarter by introducing Lewis intent vectors, an AtBot service that builds on Lewis to make language understanding even better. As with the last videos, you'll need an AtBot Enterprise license or a free trial, plus an Office 365 account that includes Microsoft Flow. Microsoft Teams is also useful to have in this case. One of the major steps in this skill is creating an IT trouble ticket. In this case, we're using ServiceNow, one of the popular cloud services out there. If you want to use ServiceNow, you'll need a Flow P1 or P2 plan because ServiceNow's connector is a premium connector. And of course, you'll need a service account in ServiceNow. If you don't use ServiceNow, you'll need a connector to whatever tool you use. You may have to build a custom connector in Flow, but once it's built, you can reuse it over and over, so it's definitely a worthy investment. So let's break down this skill. First, the user is going to tell the bot that they need to connect to a printer. The bot is going to respond back and ask which type of printer the person wants to use, color or black and white. User will respond which preference, and the bot's going to come back and say, hey, where do you want to print? User will confirm the printing location, and the bot's going to file a ticket in the background so that no matter what, this automated response will get recorded and IT will have the metrics for it. After that, the bot's going to send a list of all the printers that the person has to choose from so they know which printer they can connect to, and then the bot's going to send the instructions on how to connect. The user is going to try those steps, and after a short delay, the bot will get back and say, hey user, did that work? User's going to respond with a yes or a no, and the bot is going to either close the ticket if the process worked, or it will elevate the ticket to Tier 2 to a human at the IT service desk if it doesn't work. Now, as with the last video, this process is meant to run a user through an automated standard operating procedure, as opposed to bothering a human for each question that comes up. This is useful on both sides. The IT team has to invest less time into repetitive questions and issue resolution, and the user benefits from 24-hour immediate service with a worst-case scenario of the bot just raising the issue to a human anyway. Building on this foundation, AtBot's intent vectors can get all the input needed before kicking off the skill in Microsoft Flow. This is powerful because if you need a lot of input and Lewis is able to identify entities, you'll still have to build in a bunch of conditional steps and loops in your skill. Steps like, if this piece of information is missing, ask this question. Intent vectors lets you set up the input questions in AtBot's admin center so they get kicked off first, and the skill won't be triggered until all the input is gathered. It's a really powerful way to simplify your flows. All right, so let's get started. We're going to jump right into Lewis. So I'm going to go to lewis.ai, and I'm actually going to open the app that we dealt with in the last video. So I'm going to open up the intent connected to printer. And in this case, we actually have to create some entities, which are effectively variables about the intent that you're working with. So in this case, I want the printer type. Is it going to be black and white, or is it going to be color? This is simple, so it's just going to be a string. And now I have that in addition to a couple other entities. If I go back into my connect to printer intent, I'm going to add some utterances that include the entity. So you'll see I can add I need a color printer. If I click the word, I can actually replace it with the printer type. So it's now become basically a variable. I'm going to also do that for black and white. And if I click black and then click and then click white, I can make that whole thing, that whole phrase into that variable. So I'll add a few more into here. Once there's an entity, that can get ported over into the AtBot admin center where we can say if this entity pops up or we know that Lewis has this entity or this app has this entity, then we need to clarify and get some more information later on. Okay, we've successfully added some more utterances, so now we're going to have to train the app and then we're going to have to publish the app. After we do that, we're going to grab the authoring key as reference in the AtBot admin portal later. So here we are, we'll just do the publish quick, and once that's done, we're going to grab that authoring key from the settings menu under your name. Copy that. Then we're going to jump over to admin.atbot.io, and from the dashboard, we'll click AI integrations on the bottom left, and then click Lewis intent vectors. You basically have to create a reference to the intent in the AtBot admin center. So here we're going to choose, the region is the West US for us. I just pasted in my API key. Now it gives me all of the different apps that I have, and then each app has intents. and we're going for connect to printer. So this now creates the intent vector. You'll see all of the entities that are available. I want printer type for this one. I'm going to make this a choice. I will give it a friendly description here, and then it's going to automatically respond with the follow-up question, and the response options are going to be those choice options. So do you want to have a black and white, color, printer, or it doesn't matter? And I usually like to provide doesn't matter because some people, in cases where there doesn't matter is a reasonable answer, they don't want to choose, so just let them pick. And we're actually going to move forward with assuming that it means black and white, that the company is cost conscious. So we update the vector, click OK, and we're good. Our intent vector now exists. They will automatically get that question every time they run this one. And now we jump into Microsoft Flow. So I'm going to click My Flows, and I'm going to create a flow from blank. One thing about this is that you cannot take the flow that we built last time and just replace the trigger. We actually have a different trigger that we have to use in this case. So if you're going to use intent vectors, make sure that you are building them from the very beginning, because otherwise if you build one flow and then try to like copy and paste it, you can't do that with flow yet. I'm sure that's on the way, but it's not something that you can currently do. So we're going to call this troubleshoot connecting a printer with IVs, intent vectors, so I know the difference. And my first thing is going to be an AtBot trigger. So let's search for AtBot. There's only two triggers, like I just mentioned, when a registered intent is used and when an intent is used. So we've always used the when an intent is used. A registered intent means intent vectors. So I'll put in a quick description here, connect to a printer. And I'm going to live dangerously and leave my bot trigger type as shared so anybody can use it while I'm testing. And you'll see my intent vectors, I have all of my intent vectors that exist right now. So I'm going to use the connect to printer. Don't mistake that with the one below it because I have another version of this elsewhere. Next step, I'm going to initialize a variable here. So let's search for a variable. And I'm going to rename this so I know which variable I'm initializing. This is ticket ID. So this is the same variable that we used in the last one. It is not a Boolean. It is a string, and it has no value to start with. Next, I'm going to initialize one more variable. This is new. This is going to be the printer type, and this is going to come from our intent vector. So I'm going to initialize variable, and this is going to be printer type. And let's do that again. This is also a string. Okay. Now, we are going to determine the printer type. That's going to be our next step. This is where we're going to introduce the concept of a switch case, which is actually sort of like a simplified hardcore if statement, which is really, really, really handy. Basically, you're saying if a value is X, or if this variable X comes in, if it is a value of Y, Z, alpha, beta, whatever, you can do all the things that are dependent on those cases. So it's really handy for it in this case. So the variable here is actually going to be printer type. It's coming directly from AtBot, so I'm going to click that. My first case is going to be black and white. And all I'm going to do in this is set the variable so that the variable printer type is a given from the very beginning. So I'm going to do set variable. And I'm going to rename this as printer type 1. And the name is printer type. And the value is going to be black and white. Now I'm going to do this for the two other options that we have. So this one is color. And set variable again. Printer type. Let's rename this one too. And this is going to be color. Now you'll note that I'm using lowercase for the values. That's actually on purpose because what's happening here is I'm going to use those values later on in sentences, so in pre-written statements. So I want them to match up. So I'll know later on that if I ever want to use the value in a sentence that it can't start a sentence, it doesn't have a, it will not have a capital letter. And like I said, that doesn't matter. We'll just default to black and white because that's cheaper. And you also have the option here for the default. If it's not one of those three, what happens if that occurs? So in this case, because we are asking the user a list of choices, they can click one of the buttons. But if they were to type in something that wasn't one of those choices, that effectively is an invalid entry. And Flow right now does not have a really great way to deal with invalid entries. So the best option here is just to terminate the flow and to send a reply back to the user to say, hey, sorry, I don't really know what that means. So I'm going to do a send reply from AtBot, and then I'm going to cancel the flow. So that basically means that AtBot will not continue the flow, and then the person has the option to restart it if they want to. So let's see here. Now sending, hey, I can't do that type of responses are a little bit, you have to be kind of safe on how you phrase that. So feel free to change this up. This is just something I came up with quickly. But then, of course, the reply activity box will get the reply activity. And then we'll add the terminate. The status, I'm going to go with cancel just because it's not really all that important. Okay, and that is our switch case. So I'm going to minimize that. And it doesn't matter how you went through the switch case, except for the default, the cancel the process. No matter which of those three you go through, you will end up in the next step, which is going to be getting the user data about that person. So let's get the user profile. And this is going to be coming from the user ID that AtBot puts through. Okay, next step is going to be to create that ServiceNow ticket. So let's look up ServiceNow. I'm going to create a record, and there's really only one record type, or only one record field that we have to fill out here. I will use incident again, because that seems to be the standard. Okay. And we're going to use the short description. So I'm just going to Control F that and work my way down. And in short description, this is going to be pre-populated basically. So when the ticket is created, the admin, if they ever have to look at the ticket, will know that it says needs help choosing and connecting to a network printer. And that's it. So now we'll minimize this step. We've now created the ticket. And from there, we are going to set the variable of ticket ID, because now we have a ticket ID since we created a ticket. So let's change this, set variable to of ticket ID. That's the variable. And the value is going to be the sys ID. That's the field name in ServiceNow. And that will provide us with an easy to find variable name that is specific to our flow. Okay, I'm now going to basically acknowledge to the user that the bot has now taken this up, because at this point the bot hasn't really replied except for that cancel option. The bot hasn't replied at all to the user. They're only seeing the intent vector response, which is that which type of printer do you want to connect to. So now we have to sort of acknowledge that we're responding to the user and that we are taking on this ticket or this help request. So let's grab send reply. I'm going to rename this to the greeting, because that is what we are doing. And I'll throw in a little bit of some personal touch here. So the given name in the Office 365 connector is the first name of the person. And of course here, reply activity gets reply activity. And now I'm going to kind of add even a little bit more personal step here. And I'm going to ask the user where they want to print to, right? So we can actually grab their location, which is good. And and we can automatically provide information about printers and their location, but maybe they're not in that location. So I'm going to send a choice response back. So get choice. So this would be a separate message from the greeting. And let me rename this so it's location confirmation. And my message here is going to be, it looks like you work from the whatever office location is in Active Directory. Office, is that where you want to print? And we'll give them the option of yes or no. And this is important because let's say that I'm in the New York office and I am setting up a printer that's actually in the London office. So I want to print to somebody else, or maybe I'm traveling. So the bot shouldn't just assume that because my office location is designated in Active Directory that I definitely want to print wherever that is, right? So it's probably more likely, if I'm not new to the organization, that I'm probably moving around or am in some place that's new, which is why I'm hooking up a printer, okay? So we're going to do that. Now what we're going to do is provide a condition, basically if they said yes or if they said no. So in this condition, I am going to basically test what the response was from the user. And this is why I specifically like renaming my steps, because it's very clear to me here which step I'm getting the data from. Now, if I had other get choice responses in this skill, I didn't rename them, they could have a number 1, number 2, number 3. They just automatically get numbered, and it's not very clear to me which they're using, so it can get very confusing. But in this case, I know I'm using the location confirmation, so I'll say response choices from the last step, and I'm going to say is equal to yes, because that is this option right here. Okay, and under yes, we're going to include, and this is a little bit complex, but it's really useful for us because it takes a little while to build on this end, but for the user side of things, it makes it so that almost every option or every permutation that they would want to go through is available, and it doesn't take a whole lot of investment on our time. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to add another switch case, because I do love these switch cases. And let me add this. And it's effectively going to be based on which location that they're in. So if office location is equal to headquarters, and these are predetermined locations for us. So we know that in this case, there's actually 3 different locations. There's headquarters, New York, and London. Okay, so if it is under headquarters, or if their office location is headquarters, I'm going to ask them some questions based on information that we have to get them the printer list that is available to them on their floor. So I'm going to say in this case, if headquarters, I'm going to do a get choice response because I want to find out which floor they're on. Now, theoretically, you could have this listed in Active Directory. So if you already have that available, you can just pull it, and you don't even have to ask them. You can just assume, or ask them, do you want to use the floor that you're on? You know, that kind of thing. So I'm going to say for this, which floor, HQ1. I'm using the number 1 here because we're actually, when you go to the no condition, if they want to choose a different location from where their office location is identified, all of the same steps are going to be happening here too. So we're basically going to make a copy of the yes answer, but on the no side, and that's for if they want to choose a different office. So then they get to choose which office, and then it will run through those steps based on the choice that they make. In this case, it's the office that is already in Active Directory, and they already confirmed that that's the one that they want to have to print out on. So here I'm going to say, all right, and which floor in the Now, how do I know what I should put in this? Well, the whole point of this flow, actually, it's going to be pulling information from a very simple SharePoint list that we have in the Information Technology SharePoint site. So here is a list of all of the printers that we have, right? I have a simple field here called Office, and these are drop-down. This is a drop-down choice, so it's either headquarters, London, or New York, which floor number it's on, and which Chrome type it is, so whether it's color or black and white. So I can either pull dynamically, which would be pretty slick, but we didn't do that for this example. I can filter down here and say, okay, in headquarters, this filters, and you can now see that the printers are only located on floors 1 and 2. So perhaps those are the only floors that we rent out, or perhaps those are the only floors that we do rent that have printers. So my only two choices in this case should be 1 and 2. Okay, and then I'm going to do a send reply, confirming that we got the selection choice from the user. And this is basically teeing up the list when it's going to be sent to the user. So I'm going to say I found the following printer type, color or black and white, printers you can use. And now based on that, I am going to pull from that SharePoint list. The beauty of this is that I can actually pull the data dynamically, respond out based on a filter that I put into Flow, where it says I only want the printers, let's say, that are black and white and on floor 1. So that's really only one printer that's available. And it can come back and it'll tell me that this is the printer that I want to check out. So I'm going to now get items. That's one of the options that SharePoint Online provides through its connector. Okay, from here I have to choose which site I want to use. And it's my information technology site, and the list name is going to be printer guides. All right, now I have to open up advanced options, and the one thing that I have to do is use the filter query here. And you have to use or enter this exactly. That it sort of has its own little syntax. So I'm going to say that office equals headquarters, because I know that I'm choosing headquarters. Office in this case is this column, office. And floor equals the choice response from just above, the location confirmation. Sorry, which floor HQ1? That's what I want. So let's see. Here it is right here. So again, this is why naming your steps really matters. So it's that response choice. So it's going to be the number that they choose. And Chrome equals our variable printer type. This is also important as to why originally when I set the variable, why I used lowercase letters, because I also used them in the list, and it is case sensitive. So what's going to happen now is that once I do this query filter, it will pull only the ones that matter. All right. Okay, so I'm going to rename this. Okay, now we're going to add another step that is an apply to each. So basically, when I get these items, based on that filter, if there's more than one, I need to spit them all out one by one. So I'm going to do that. So here's my apply to each, and I'll rename this. Okay, and I'm going to be going based on the value that I pull out of SharePoint. My next action is going to be to send a reply through AtBot. My reply is going to be HQ printers. And I'm going to be pulling data now from my SharePoint list. Now there's a whole bunch of fields here, so I don't need to go through all of them. I just know that the title is what I used for the name of the printer. And I'm going to go with a description here for the Chrome value. So let's, X printer is a black and white printer on floor, and then add the floor value. And period. Reply activity. Okay, so that's the ends of the steps of picking which, or getting the list of printers that are available to you based on your location and your floor. So dynamically, anytime that this list is updated, as long as the metadata is correct or updated correctly, it doesn't matter. You don't have to make any changes to flow. It will automatically pull the correct information dynamically each time. So now I'm going to repeat this for each of the other 2 buildings. So that would be our locations. It's going to be New York and London. And then I'll have a default that will effectively cancel the thing if they choose something that's not one of my options. I'm speeding this up just so that you don't have to sit and watch repetitive steps over and over, but feel free to pause to see any of the information or screenshots. Also, I want to point out that I realized the syntax that I used for the search query with SharePoint, the dynamic information and the dynamic content requires apostrophes around it, so make sure to include those, otherwise your query won't work. And yay, post-production fixes. Okay, so that completes the first switch, which is under the yes, if you choose to print at the location that Office 365 identifies you having working in. So now we're going to basically do the same thing under the no. So if you want to choose where you want to print, that's going to be the next one. So first we're going to ask them which office do they actually want to print at. Make this a little bit personal. And now we're going to introduce the switch case. And it's effectively the exact same switch as before. Get this as response choice. From which office? That's the value that we want. Okay, first one is going to be headquarters, like on the other switch case, and we're going to do the exact same steps. And we're speeding up again to retain your sanity. You are welcome. And a friendly reminder, remember to use those apostrophes around the dynamic content in your SharePoint filter query. Otherwise, none of this will work. Fair warning. Okay, so that completes all of the switch cases for if somebody wants to choose a different office that they're not currently working in. And I just realized that I had some issues or did some copy pasting, some lazy copy pasting. So let me fix this because it would look a little bit weird if I had confirmed I was in the New York office and I got responses back that said, great, I'm so happy that you're in headquarters. And let me do that for London as well. Okay, and then my defaults are all good to go too. Okay, so I'm going to close up this condition. And now we are back to just the single line steps, because once each of those conditions and the switch cases, no matter which case you go through, it's just going to hit you with a bunch of, hey, this printer is available, this printer is available, this printer is available. When it's done, it will just continue on down through this skill. And I'm going to send the instructions now to actually show the person how to connect to the printer. So the first step is going to be a send reply that basically will be teeing the person up to let them know that they're going to get instructions next. And now we're going to give the actual instructions in this one. And for this one, I actually copied the text already, so I didn't have to try to type all this stuff in. I'm going to paste this in, and that includes, so this is the these are the instructions, sort of the too long didn't read, and I think it's very important to include the actual instructions in the chat, because I shouldn't have to point you someplace else and then bring you back to the chat later. But these are the instructions. This is specific to Windows 10, and you don't have to leave the chat, but if you do have an issue, I'm also providing a link to the official Microsoft support page. Now, if you have internal pages you want to use instead that are more specific to your use case, by all means connect to a SharePoint page, whatever. It will just be permission restricted however it already is. So if it's a publishing site that everybody has access to internally, then there should be no problem. But if you happen to use a web page that has some sort of permission restrictions on it or requires a separate login, they would have to go through that, or they wouldn't have access. So just keep in mind that who your users are from the AtBot perspective need to match up permission-wise with whatever place that you send them later on. So I'm going to put in a quick delay here. In the real world, I'd probably make this a couple of minutes so that the user has a chance to actually try this out and make sure that it works. In this case, I'm going to just do 10 seconds just so that we can see how it works in a demo a little bit later. Okay, and now we're going to ask the user, hey, did that work? So we're going to get a choice response here and ask the user, did that work? If yes, if no, and we'll do some condition for that as well. So let's do this, success confirmation. And the message is, were you able to get the printer connected? Choice values are going to be just a simple yes, no. Reply activity. And we're going to add a new condition here. This is going to be effectively yes or no. So based on that response from the success confirmation, my choice here will be my default's going to be a yes. So if yes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the ServiceNow record, and we're going to close it because it was good, it worked out. So let's update record here, and I'm going to rename this close ticket. My ticket type is incident. And my ticket ID or system ID here that's required is going to be my ticket ID. So it's a lot easier to grab that than to have to grab from the full list of what that has. ServiceNow requires a few fields to be completed before you can close it. One of those is state, so I'm just going to do a Control F real quick. The value for a closed ticket is the word closed as written. Next up, I'm going to provide the resolution code right here, and that value is going to be solved permanently, and it has to be typed exactly, because these are actually choice fields. And then resolution notes is the next one. These are required, but they're also very useful. So user was able to connect to the printer using the guidance from AtBot. So give AtBot a shout out for doing some good work. Okay, that's it for the updating. So now we've closed the ticket. Next, we are going to send a reply that's going to confirm that we now know that you were successful, or that the user was successful in getting the printer connected. So let's rename this, confirm success, and alrighty. Let's add a reply activity here. And then one last message I think is a good practice, which is basically the farewell. So another send reply. We'll call this a success farewell. And just so you know, AtBot does support emoji, so I think I will toss in a smiley face here. Okay, so we're actually done on the if the automated workflow works. So that's good. We'll minimize that. Now, if it didn't work, we want to find out why not, and we're going to update the ticket so that it gets elevated to a different to tier 2, effectively to a human. So in this case, we're going to get a response from the user because we want to find out what didn't work, or if they had any errors or anything like that. So let's do a get response from user. And in this case, it's going to be user error comments. And we're going to let the user provide us some info. So sorry to hear that. Have to give a name. Oops. Okay, now we're going to update the record. So we'll go into ServiceNow. And this is the same step, except we're going to change the status and not close it. So let's do this. Note what didn't work. We are using an incident. And we are pulling ticket ID. Okay, so there are no real requirements here, but I am going to search out work notes. Okay, actually not that one, it is just work notes. And I'm going to put in here, this is effectively, hey, this is what we tried. So in here it's going to say standard instructions for adding a printer didn't work. User provided the following comments. And we're going to pull the response text from the user error comments. So now whatever the person said is going to get uploaded directly into ServiceNow, and now there is some contextual information about the user and about the user's experience directly in ServiceNow without having to do anything else special. I'm also, we don't have to do this, but I'm going to also change the urgency so that it might end up being higher up on the list for whoever ends up looking at this. And the way ServiceNow looks at it is they use this numbering system, and their default system at least is a 1- high, and then it would be 2- medium and 3- low. This is also the place where you would either assign this to a human being by their name, or to a group, or to give it a category name that would be associated with a group that would get notified with, hey, there's a new ticket. So until that happens, the humans on the service desk would never actually see that these tickets exist. They would just be happening automatically underneath them. They would never know. So this is the place where, depending on how you use it, whether you do it by category, by person name, by group name, however that works, this is where you would update the correct field for that. So that's all the information I need right now for the record update. And now I'm going to send a reply that's effectively a handoff confirmation that, hey, I wasn't able to help, so I'm going to give this to somebody else. And I'm actually saying that I'm submitting a ticket now, which isn't true at all, but the user doesn't need to really know that. And we'll send one more reply, and that's going to be the farewell. And like I said, we should show off our emoji skill, perhaps. And one last reply activity, and we hit save, and we're done. So this flow is now set up. We can send this skill to AtBot, and AtBot can try it out. So let's finalize connections and get this tested out so you can see how it works. So now we're going to jump into the AtBot admin portal, and what we're going to do is we're going to find where this skill is. Now, because I made this a shared skill to begin with, it's now available in the admin portal as long as you are an admin in AtBot to be able to see that. Now, for this to be connected to a bot, it needs to be categorized under a category that is assigned to a bot. So I'm going to use a bot that we call GoBot, which is sort of a general offices bot. And I'm going to use categorize this skill here as GoBot services. And I'll update this category. So you see now GoBot services is included within this connect to printer. I'll also show you under the bot management, if I go to our list of bots and I scroll down, GoBot is currently only able to perform the skills that are underneath GoBot services. So now I can test this out. First thing I have to do is sideload GoBot into Microsoft Teams. So this is a good enough team here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add GoBot. And the first thing I have to do is download the Teams package. This is just a download of a zip, and I just have to install basically once. And if I go to apps, and I choose upload a custom app, I'm only able to see this because I am an admin of this team. Okay, so you now see GoBot as a custom app that's available within this team. And I'm going to jump into a test environment. And you can actually see here that GoBot has already greeted us. And basically anybody that's in this team will have access to GoBot either in the team or in private chat. So you'll see if I were to call out GoBot here, it ends up being an option that I can @mention in the team. But I am going to use this in a private chat, and I'm going to start a new chat here and go with GoBot. So you'll see if I type in the name, it shows up as an option. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say help. That is a good starter term to use when sending to a bot. And GoBot is going to, since this is the first time that I'm using GoBot on this account, GoBot's going to ask me to log in. So I'm just going to confirm who I am through the Microsoft login experience. And once it's good, I'll get this confirmation, and you'll see here that GoBot can now provide me that help response, and connect to a printer is one of the options. So I'm going to run through this as a test. I'm going to say I need to connect to a network printer. Now, this is where the intent vector comes in. So it's asking me which type of printer do I want. I'm going to say black and white. And now this is where GoBot is kicking off the flow in the background as opposed to the intent vectors. So GoBot now knows that I'm coming from or I work in the London office, and it's going to ask me if I want to print there or elsewhere. I'm going to say no, and I'm going to choose a different office so I can show you how that switch statement worked. So I get to choose here headquarters, London or New York. So I'm going to go with New York. This is where GoBot is pulling from the SharePoint list as to which floors I can pick. So I'm going to say I want a black and white printer on floor 7 in New York. And this is where GoBot's now pulling from the SharePoint list and giving me the list of all of the printers that are available. So these 2 printers are black and white printers on floor 7 in New York. And now here's the instructions. So it says from your desktop, blah, blah, blah. And if I need more information, I can click here. So I'm going to do that. So this brings me right to the Microsoft support page, which is the link that I had provided earlier with some screenshots. Now this is assuming Windows 10. And after a brief delay, that 10 seconds, it asked me, was I able to get connected? I'm going to say no. And I'll show you what happens with the ticket in the background. So in this case, it's asking me what problem did I have? And I'm going to say I'm using Mac OS, which is true. These instructions were for Windows 10. Okay, so I have the ticket, or it tells me that the ticket has been submitted. And if I jump back into ServiceNow and I go to my list of tickets, the most recent one is going to be this one. And if I click on that ticket number, you'll see that it opened the ticket automatically. It updated it to a different priority, and it provided the update here of my statement, which is that I'm using Mac OS. You've got options for improving this skill, many of which we covered in the last video. What's important to add here is how much more you can do with intent vectors. For example, you could gather the operating system and provide specific instructions to that operating system. There are lots of other things you can do to expand this skill, and once you have one IT skill created, create more to automate that much more of Tier 1. Not sure where to start? Check out your IT trouble ticket metrics and do your best to automate, say, the top 10, 20, maybe even 30 most frequent ticket types. There's so much opportunity to save time and money with this strategy. That concludes our series on automating IT service desk operations using AtBot and Microsoft Flow. Hopefully this gives you some ideas on how you could use a chatbot, or multiple, in your organization. Perhaps your public-facing customer service team could benefit? You can easily connect AtBot to a CRM like Dynamics or Salesforce. Lots more potential for sure. If you're interested in learning more about AtBot, we've got a risk-free 30-day trial so you can run a quality proof of concept in as few as 5 days. Most good bots, when built from scratch, take months of development and a lot of money. AtBot, since it's a bot as a service, makes these significantly faster and easier. It's scalable and easy to use for almost anyone. AtBot democratizes bots for the masses. So check out our Jumpstart guide for everything you need to know to get started building bots and saving resources and time. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more great chatbot, machine learning, and AI tips and tricks to improve your workforce.